Abandoned at 10, now they want my custom-built home. How I stood my ground when my parents returned after 17 years. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. I'm a 27-year-old man who built a life from nothing after my parents abandoned me to foster care when I was 10 years old. For 17 years, I had no contact with them or my younger sister. Now they're suddenly back in my life, expecting me to house them in the custom home I built after my career took off. I never expected to see my parents again. The day they dropped me off at Child Protective Services is seared into my memory. My mother avoiding eye contact, my father muttering something about doing what's best before they walked away, leaving me with a backpack of clothes and a social worker who looked as shocked as I felt. I was told they kept my sister Emma, who was 7 at the time, but they couldn't handle me anymore. The foster system wasn't kind. I bounced between 5 homes in 8 years, some decent, others nightmarish. No one ever adopted me. When I aged out at 18, I had nothing but determination to prove my parents wrong about whatever they thought was wrong with me. I worked multiple jobs to put myself through community college, then earned a scholarship to finish my degree in software engineering. I landed an entry-level position at a tech company that recognized my potential. I worked my way up quickly, saved aggressively, and at 25, designed and built my dream home, not extravagant, but comfortable with 3 bedrooms, a home office, and enough yard for the dog I'd always wanted but was never allowed to have. Last week, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was surprised to find a woman in her mid-20s standing there, looking nervous. "James," she asked. "It's Emma. Your sister." I barely recognized her. The last time I'd seen her, she was a little girl with pigtails. Now she was an adult, with our mother's eyes and our father's chin. We awkwardly hugged, and I invited her in. Over coffee, Emma explained that she'd tracked me down through social media. She'd always wondered what happened to me, but our parents told her I'd chosen to leave, that I was a troubled child who couldn't be managed. It wasn't until she found old documents in their attic last year that she discovered the truth. "I confronted them," she said. "It was horrible. They made excuses about financial troubles and your behavioral issues, but nothing justifies abandoning a child." I appreciated her honesty but felt uncomfortable discussing the past. I steered the conversation toward her life instead. She'd graduated college, worked as a teacher, and recently married. It felt surreal discussing ordinary milestones with someone who shared my blood but was essentially a stranger. As Emma prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. "There's something else," she said. "Mom and Dad know where you live now. They're in trouble. They got evicted from their apartment last month, and I've been letting them stay with me and my husband. But it's not working out. They're demanding, ungrateful, and frankly, alcoholism has made them worse than they were before." I felt my chest tighten. What does this have to do with me? "They're planning to reach out to you. They've been talking about how successful you must be, with your big house and everything. I heard them discussing how you owe them a place to stay since I'm kicking them out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I haven't seen or heard from them in 17 years. They abandoned me with nothing, and now they expect me to house them. Emma looked down. "I know it's insane. That's why I wanted to warn you. I feel terrible for enabling them this long, but I can't do it anymore. My marriage is suffering." After Emma left, I sat in my living room trying to process everything. The parents who decided a 10-year-old was too much trouble now believed I owed them shelter in my home? The audacity was staggering. I didn't have to wait long for them to make contact. The next day, an unfamiliar number called my phone. It was my mother, voice raspy from years of smoking, acting as though we'd just spoken last week. "James, honey, it's Mom. Emma told us where you're living now. We're so proud of what you've accomplished. We always knew you had it in you." I remained silent, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Anyway, your father and I are in a bit of a situation. Emma's being unreasonable about us staying with her, and we thought, since you have that big house now, we could come stay with you for a while. Just until we get back on our feet." When I didn't immediately agree, her tone changed. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? We're your parents, James. Family helps family." I hung up without responding. Minutes later, my father called, alternating between guilt trips and veiled threats about family obligations. I blocked both their numbers. Now I'm sitting here, stunned by their entitlement. They abandoned me when I needed them most, and now they believe I owe them shelter simply because we share DNA? I've worked too hard to build this life, this sanctuary, just to hand it over to the people who threw me away like I was nothing. I don't know what to do if they show up. Part of me wants to tell them exactly what I think of them, but another part wants to avoid engaging at all. I've spent years in therapy working through my abandonment issues, and I'm afraid that seeing them will undo all that progress. How do I handle this situation when the very people who taught me I wasn't worth keeping now believe they're entitled to the home I built with my own hands? Update 1. They showed up with luggage. It's been 2 weeks since my initial post, and things have escalated faster than I anticipated. My parents showed up at my doorstep unannounced yesterday, suitcases in hand, clearly expecting to move in. After I blocked their numbers, I thought I'd have more time to prepare for this confrontation. I was wrong. I was working in my home office when the doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by aggressive knocking. When I opened the door, there they stood, 17 years older and clearly worse for wear, but unmistakably the same people who walked away from me all those years ago. My mother attempted to hug me while my father stood behind her with 2 large suitcases and a duffel bag. I stepped back, maintaining physical distance. "James, look at you, all grown up," my mother exclaimed, as if we were reuniting after a brief separation instead of nearly 2 decades of abandonment. I remained in the doorway, blocking their entry. "What are you doing here?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "Emma told you about our situation, right? We thought it was best to come straight here instead of calling since you weren't answering our calls." "I blocked your numbers intentionally," I said. "That wasn't an invitation to show up unannounced." My mother's smile faltered. "Don't be ridiculous, James. We're your parents. Of course we can visit you." "You stopped being my parents the day you left me at CPS," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. My father's face reddened. "We did what we had to do. Times were tough. Not too tough to keep Emma, apparently." This comment hit a nerve. My mother's expression hardened. "We're not here to rehash the past. We need a place to stay, and you have room. It's the right thing to do." "The right thing to do," I repeated, incredulous. Like abandoning your 10-year-old child was the right thing to do? "We made mistakes," my father conceded, not sounding particularly remorseful. "But we're family, and family sticks together when times get tough." I almost laughed at the irony. That's not how it worked 17 years ago. My mother stepped forward, trying to push past me into the house. "James, stop being difficult. It's getting cold out here, and we need to get settled." I held my ground. "I'm not letting you in. This is my home, and you're not welcome here." "You can't be serious," my father scoffed. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I said. "You managed without me for 17 years. I'm sure you can figure something out." My mother's face crumpled in what I recognized as her manipulative cry, the same expression she'd used to get her way when I was a child. "How can you be so cruel? We gave you life. And then you threw it away," I responded. "Please leave my property now, or I'll call the police." My father stepped forward, his finger inches from my face. "You ungrateful little—" I cut him off by closing the door and locking it. Through the window, I watched them stand there for nearly 20 minutes, alternating between knocking, pleading, and cursing. Eventually, they retreated to their car parked on the street. They didn't leave, though. They sat in their car for hours, occasionally honking or calling out to me. I drew the blinds and turned up my music to drown them out. Eventually, around 10 p.m., they drove away. This morning, I woke up to dozens of voicemails and texts from unknown numbers. Apparently, they've recruited extended family members I've never even met to guilt me into taking them in. One message was from my uncle, my father's brother, saying I was breaking my parents' hearts, and that blood is thicker than water. I've also received an email from Emma apologizing for the situation. She confirmed that our parents had been staying with her and her husband for 3 months before she finally asked them to leave due to their drinking, constant demands, and disrespect of boundaries. She warned me they might try to use other family members to pressure me. I've decided to stand my ground. I've changed the locks, I was overdue for an upgrade anyway, installed security cameras, and informed my neighbors about the situation in case my parents try to create a scene or attempt to break in when I'm not home. The hardest part is the emotional toll. Seeing them brought back memories I'd worked hard to process in therapy. The confusion of that day at CPS, the nights I cried myself to sleep in strange beds, the birthdays and holidays spent alone while other foster kids received visits from their families. But it also confirmed that I made the right decision in cutting contact. They haven't changed, they're still the same selfish people who abandoned me when I became inconvenient. I'm scheduled to speak with my therapist tomorrow to process everything. In the meantime, I'm focusing on work, taking my dog for long walks, and reminding myself that I don't owe these people anything. Not my time, not my emotional energy, and certainly not my home. Update 2. 3 months later, the guilt campaign intensifies. It's been 3 months since my parents showed up at my doorstep, and I thought the situation would have died down by now. I was wrong. After I refused to let them in, they temporarily stayed at a motel before convincing a distant cousin to take them in. Now they're using this relative's home as a base of operations for their full-fledged guilt campaign against me. The first phase involved daily calls and texts from various family members. When I blocked those numbers, they created new email addresses and social media accounts to continue their harassment. Messages ranged from emotional manipulation, "Your mother cries herself to sleep every night thinking about you," to outright threats, "We'll tell everyone what an ungrateful son you are." Then they escalated to showing up at my workplace. Security had to escort them out twice. My boss has been understanding, but I can tell the disruption is becoming a concern. The most disturbing development happened last week when they somehow obtained my friend Michael's contact information. Michael has been my best friend since college and is practically a brother to me. They called him with an elaborate story about how I was mentally unstable and needed family intervention. They asked him to let them into my house when I wasn't home because they were worried about my well-being. Fortunately, Michael saw through their manipulation immediately. He called me right after to warn me and express his shock at their behavior. "Now I understand why you never talked about them," he said. "They're actually unhinged. Emma has been keeping me updated on their schemes. Apparently, they've been telling the entire extended family that I'm hoarding wealth while they suffer, conveniently omitting the fact that they abandoned me as a child. They've created a narrative where they were loving parents who, temporarily, placed me in foster care due to financial hardship, with the intention of reuniting our family once they were stable again. This version of events is completely fabricated. Emma found the original CPS documents in which our parents signed away their parental rights permanently. They made no attempts to check on me, send birthday cards, or inquire about my well-being. They never tried to get me back. The situation took another turn when they began contacting my neighbors. Mrs. Peterson, the retired teacher who lives next door, came over one afternoon looking concerned. She explained that my parents had approached her with a story about being locked out of their son's house during a family emergency. They asked if she had a spare key or knew how to access my property. Mrs. Peterson, bless her, didn't trust them and came to check with me first. When I explained the situation, she was appalled. She's now one of several neighbors keeping an eye out for my parents' car and has promised to call me if they show up when I'm not home. Last month, I received a certified letter from a lawyer claiming to represent my parents. The letter stated they were considering legal action to claim parental support based on filial responsibility laws. I immediately consulted my own attorney, who assured me that such laws either don't exist or aren't enforceable in our state, especially given the documented abandonment. Still, the threat of legal action, however baseless, added another layer of stress. Emma's relationship with our parents has also deteriorated further. After she refused to pressure me into taking them in, they turned on her too, spreading rumors among family members that she and her husband are selfish millennials who don't respect their elders. She's now limiting contact with them as well, which has only fueled their anger. The most bizarre incident occurred during a family wedding last month. I didn't attend, but Emma did, and she called me afterward, distraught. Our parents had spent the entire reception telling anyone who would listen about their homeless situation and their cold-hearted children who refused to help them. They even approached the bride's parents, distant relatives we barely know, asking if they could temporarily stay in their vacation home. My therapist has been invaluable throughout this ordeal. She's helping me maintain boundaries without feeling guilty and processing the complex emotions that resurface with each new confrontation. The hardest part is acknowledging that the parents I remember, flawed as they were, are actually worse than I thought. They didn't just abandon me, they're willing to harass, manipulate, and publicly humiliate both their children to get what they want. I've taken additional security measures around my home, upgrading to a comprehensive security system with cameras and motion sensors, changing my phone number, and creating new email addresses for important contacts only. I've also informed my company's HR department about the situation in case my parents try to create problems at work again. Despite the ongoing stress, there's a silver lining. This situation has brought Emma and me closer. We're slowly building the sibling relationship we were denied as children. She and her husband came over for dinner last weekend, and for a few hours, I felt like I had the family I'd always wanted. People who genuinely care about my well-being rather than what they can get from me. As for my parents, I remain firm in my decision. My home is my sanctuary, built through years of hard work after they left me with nothing. I won't sacrifice my peace to people who only see me as a resource, not a son they once loved. Update 3. 6 months later, resolution and healing. It's been 6 months since my parents first reappeared in my life, and I'm writing this final update from a place of unexpected peace. The situation has resolved itself in ways I couldn't have predicted, and I've come to realizations about family, boundaries, and healing that I want to share. The turning point came about 2 months ago. After exhausting their welcome with various relatives and finding that their guilt campaign wasn't working, my parents' behavior became increasingly desperate. They showed up at my house again, this time clearly intoxicated, screaming about my obligations loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. When they began banging on my windows, I had no choice but to call the police. They were arrested for disorderly conduct, and I reluctantly attended their court hearing. Seeing them in that courtroom, disheveled, defiant, yet somehow diminished, something shifted inside me. These weren't the towering figures of my childhood nightmares anymore. They were just two damaged people whose poor choices had caught up with them. After the hearing, I agreed to speak with them in a public place with Emma present. It wasn't out of obligation or guilt, but a decision made from a position of strength. I wanted closure, not for them, but for myself. We met at a quiet coffee shop. For the first hour, it was more of the same: excuses, guilt trips, and thinly veiled demands. But when it became clear I wouldn't budge on letting them stay with me, something unexpected happened. My father, perhaps realizing his tactics weren't working, actually stopped mid-sentence and sat back in his chair. "You built a good life," he said finally, in a different tone than I'd heard before. "Better than we did." It wasn't an apology, not even close, but it was the first honest thing he'd said to me in 17 years. I took the opening to ask the question that had haunted me since childhood: why me? Why did you keep Emma but get rid of me? The ensuing conversation was difficult. Through their jumbled explanations, I learned they were deep in addiction when I was born, briefly got clean when Emma arrived, then relapsed. My behavioral issues, which I now recognize as normal reactions to living with addicted parents, became their excuse, but the real reason was simpler and more painful. I reminded my father of his own father, whom he hated, while Emma reminded my mother of herself. They abandoned me because of their own demons, not because of anything I did or was. This knowledge, painful as it is, helped free me from the belief that I was somehow inherently unlovable. After that meeting, I made 2 decisions. First, I would maintain my boundary about not allowing them to live with me. Second, I would help them find legitimate assistance for their issues. With Emma's support, I researched and provided them information about subsidized senior housing, addiction recovery programs, and employment services for older adults. I made it clear, I would help them access resources, but I would not be their resource. Initially, they rejected these options, still holding out hope I would eventually give in. But as their options dwindled and winter approached, my father reluctantly applied for the housing program. They moved into a modest apartment last month, with the first 3 months' rent covered by a community assistance program. To everyone's surprise, including mine, they've maintained sobriety for nearly 6 weeks now, the longest stretch in years, according to Emma. My father has found part-time work as a night security guard, and my mother is participating in a senior community program. I don't harbor illusions that their recovery is for me. They likely realized it was their only option. Still, it's a positive step. As for our relationship, we've established careful boundaries. We text occasionally, and I've seen them twice for brief coffee meetings in public places. I don't know if we'll ever have anything resembling a normal parent-child relationship, and I'm okay with that. What matters is that I no longer carry the weight of their abandonment as evidence of my unworthiness. The most meaningful development has been with Emma. Our growing relationship has become the family connection I always wanted. We've established a Sunday dinner tradition, alternating between our homes, where we're slowly filling in the 17-year gap in our lives. She recently shared ultrasound pictures. I'm going to be an uncle next spring. The thought of being present in my niece or nephew's life from the beginning fills me with a joy I never expected to feel in connection with family. My therapist helped me realize something important. Family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about consistent love, respect, and mutual support. By that definition, Michael and my other close friends have been my real family all along. And now Emma, too. I've also come to understand that maintaining boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. By refusing to let my parents move in, I wasn't just protecting my space, I was refusing to enable behaviors that would ultimately hurt all of us. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is say no. As for my parents, I've forgiven them, not because they deserve it, but because carrying that anger was preventing me from fully enjoying the life I've built. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing them to hurt me again. It means accepting what happened and choosing not to let it control my future. My home remains my sanctuary. I've recently finished renovating the backyard, adding a patio where Emma, her husband, and I often gather on weekend evenings. My dog has a new companion, a rescue I adopted last month who's slowly coming out of her shell, much like I have. To those who followed my story from the beginning, thank you for your support. To anyone facing similar situations with family members who believe blood entitles them to override your boundaries, stand firm. You deserve to protect the life you've built, especially if it was built despite, not because of, their influence. Life isn't perfect. My parents still have their struggles, and I still have moments where childhood pain resurfaces. But I'm no longer defined by what was done to me. I'm defined by what I've built from the ashes of that abandonment. A successful career, a beautiful home, meaningful friendships, a reconnected sibling, and most importantly, the strength to protect it all.